Anxious to hear your testimony. You may proceed.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for allowing me to testify before you today. Thomas Jefferson once wrote, "To preserve the independence of the people, we must not let our rulers load us with perpetual debt. We must make our election between economy and liberty or profusion and servitude." Unfortunately, it increasingly appears that Congress has chosen the latter path. We have a spending addiction in Washington, D.C., and it has proven to be an addiction that Congress cannot control on its own. We have gone in a few short years from a deficit of billions of dollars to a deficit of trillions of dollars. We are printing money at an unprecedented pace, which presents risks of inflation, the likes of which we have never seen. Our debt is mounting rapidly, and so is the waste associated with paying the interest on that debt. Yet Congress has so far refused to address these unsettling problems. This is not a partisan addiction. It reaches across the aisle and afflicts both parties, which is why neither party has been able to master it. We need outside help. We need pressure from outside Congress to force us to rein in this out-of-control behavior. We need a balanced budget amendment to our Constitution. Families all across our nation understand what it means to make tough decisions each day about what they can and cannot afford. According to a recent Zogby Interactive survey, approximately 70% of Americans said they have reduced spending on entertainment in the past year. 40% have limited or canceled vacation plans due to the economic environment. 40% have decreased spending on food or groceries. Almost 10% have either changed their education plans or have chosen not to pursue education plans at all. Most troubling, 16% have foregone medical treatment or prescription drugs. These numbers show how sobering our economic recession is, but they also show something more. They demonstrate a basic principle that honest, hard-working American citizens understand. When your income drops, your spending must drop one way or the other. Yet far too frequently, this fundamental principle has been lost on a Congress that is too busy spending to pay attention to the bottom line. If Americans must exercise restraint with their own funds, then government officials must be required to exercise an even higher standard when spending other people's hard-earned income. On the first day of the 111th Congress, I reintroduced legislation to give Congress the necessary pressure to rein in spending. My legislation would amend the United States Constitution to require a balanced federal budget each year. Over one-third of the members of the House of Representatives have joined this effort already. It would require that total spending for any fiscal year not exceed total receipts and require the President to propose budgets to Congress that are balanced each year. It would provide an exception in times of war and during military conflicts that pose imminent and serious military threats to national security, as well as in other emergency situations like the one we face right now. It would make it harder to increase taxes by requiring that legislation to increase revenue be passed by a true majority of each chamber and not just a majority of those present and voting. Furthermore, the bill requires a 3/5 majority vote for any increases in the debt limit. Our nation faces many difficult decisions in the coming years, and Congress faces great pressure to spend beyond its means rather than to make difficult decisions about spending priorities. Unless Congress is forced to make the decisions necessary to create a balanced budget in most years, it will always have the all-too-tempting option of shirking this responsibility. The Balanced Budget Constitutional Amendment is a common-sense approach to ensure that Congress is bound by the same fiscal principles that America's families face each day. I urge the committee to demonstrate leadership by proposing that the federal government's budget be balanced at the end of the time that is currently provided for in the budget that you will propose, or sooner, and I urge support of a balanced budget constitutional amendment to ensure that no future Congress is allowed to continue to saddle our children and grandchildren with debt that is not their own. Mr. Chairman, I thank you very much for the opportunity to testify before you and urge the committee to examine the importance of requiring that the budget of our country be balanced in most years. In the last 40 years, it's only been balanced 4 times. Really, I think it should be the opposite. There are times of national crisis like today when you could not expect the budget to be balanced immediately. But I think if we had the budget under control over that period of time, that our economy has done well in presidents of both political parties and generated surpluses to pay down the debt, as we were successful in doing for a few years in the late 1990s and the beginning of the 2000s, we would be in much better shape today to address the problems that we face right now. And I think those problems would be lesser in their nature. So I thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and you can be assured that this committee will consider every word that you said today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Happy to welcome Congressman Titus from Nevada. Welcome, and you have 5 minutes, and we appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity to express my views on the President's budget before you and your committee. During this time of economic uncertainty, it's never been more important than now to closely examine each and every dollar of federal spending. I appreciate the work that you all are doing to ensure that all points of view are considered throughout this budget process. While I'm pleased by much of the President's requests, particularly the investments in clean energy technology, I have some concerns about some of the tax provisions that are included in the budget outline. The President's budget outline indicates important investments in the research, development, and deployment of renewable energy technologies. I've heard from many of the businesses in my congressional district that the credit crisis has caused the renewable energy industry to come to a screeching halt. I strongly supported provisions in the economic recovery package